you're listening to Authentic Leadership, a series of conversations, insights and inspirations with leaders who are real, raw and authentic. I'm thrilled today to bring you the conversation I had with Ronnie Altit, CEO of Insentra. I met Ronnie when we recently spoke at the same conference, and I was immediately taken by his words and his message, which is why I'm so excited that he agreed to be in conversation with me as the heart-centered leader. Ronnie cares deeply and passionately not only about his team, but about all the stakeholders in his business. He's even trademarked the term partner obsessed. As CEO and co-founder of Insentra, an IT managed services company that was started by 4 blokes in a garage in Sydney, Ronnie now heads up a global industry leader delivering services through a partner network. But it's not the global growth strategies that I want to talk to Ronnie about. It's his heart-centered leadership philosophy. Oh, and the story of the train. And in the spirit of authenticity, you'll notice that I don't welcome Ronnie to the podcast. And that's because I forgot to read out the full intro whilst he was with me online. Enjoy. Ronnie, I've been doing a little snooping about Insentra, and I went on to Glassdoor. And for those who are unfamiliar with Glassdoor, it's a platform where current and past employees can rate their work experience. And I have to admit, I was absolutely gobsmacked by the reviews, both existing and past employees. 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. I think the lowest was 4.6 or something like that. So listen, in the words of a famous Australian politician, please explain.
Well, Claire, I think when you run an organization and you have the ability to start a culture from zero, it gives you a little bit of additional capability, right? But I think the main reason why you see reviews like that is we very consciously, and it starts from me, consciously create a culture.
Yeah.
And we try to make that culture somewhere where people actually love to work, so that they can just do what they love in the company of people who love what they do.
So just thinking about that, that it's not rocket science, Ronnie, and there are many organizations out there who are startups who are creating a culture from get-go. Yet they're not arriving at that place where people jump out of bed to come to work. So what is it about the makeup, the DNA, the ingredients of your culture that you've created that gets those people so proud of working for Insentra?
Well, I don't think there's any one thing. It's interesting you say it's not rocket science. It may not be rocket science, but it's certainly a little bit like painting a Rembrandt. There's an art to creating a culture. I think there's a lot of science around what should and shouldn't happen and how you should and shouldn't do things and what's great and what's not great. But the art is where it comes in. And a lot of it comes down to authenticity. So when a lot of people talk about, oh, we're going to create this amazing culture, or we have this amazing culture, or we want this amazing culture, but they don't want it for the right reasons. They don't want it because in their heart, they actually really care about people. They care about the experience people have. And I talk about the experience before joining, while at Insentra, and after at Insentra.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the time that they're with us. And it's also, after they leave is really just as critical. We like to think of them as part of the family. Other organizations may say alumni. For us, it's family. And I've been on a mission. In fact, in all teams, regardless of having the ability to consciously create the culture of Insentra from zero, I've had teams where I've been in larger organizations and I've had, the ability to create a micro culture, if you like, within a bigger organization.
Mm-hmm.
So if I come back to the art, it starts at the top, right? It has to start with me. And whenever I've managed teams or tried to create team environments, the thing for me is that, it's not just my responsibility. It's the responsibility of each and every person in the organization to maintain a culture. I can set the standards. I can set what it is that we want to do. I can identify how we're going to do that, but ultimately it does come down to everybody in the business all working towards the same goal and understanding, a clear definition of what is the culture, what actually does it do. And that's why I delivered the train story to every single person who started in the business.
Ah, the train story. I'm glad you've mentioned that. My goodness, I've read through the train story, and to me, it's like it's a manifesto. And you're talking about, before people join, when they join, and after they leave. And it's taking me to the massive Gallup poll that was done over 80,000 employees, 80,000 managers, 250,000 employees over 25 years. And the number one question that if organizations could say, I strongly agree to, was, I know what's expected of me at work. And for someone who's thinking of joining Insentra to read that train story, they know exactly what's required of them. So can you just share for our listeners, I want to know how the train story came about, how you've built it, how you've embedded it, because I think pardon my French, it's bloody brilliant.
I appreciate that. Thank you. The train story is not something new. It's been around with me for 20 some years. It's evolved, that's for sure. But the reason why I started with the train story was, I think everybody works well in the world of metaphors or analogies. When people can visualize something, it makes it a lot easier. So, and there's been buses, there's been lots of different things, but the reason why the train became really profound to me is because of and it is a steam train, right? When we talk about the Insentra as being a steam train, which is really quite ironic because we are in technology and here we are talking about a steam train. The idea behind that is, everybody's shoveling coal. We're all on the same train, and we all might have our own carriages, which is the different teams that exist within an organization are all their individual carriages. Yet for the train to go, everyone has to shovel coal. We all have to be making sure that everything works beautifully on the train. So that's kind of where it came from, was what type of analogy could I have that everyone would be able to relate to, because they've all been on one or seen one, even the younger kids in the audience, even the latest generation, they've all done some type of steam train. I think Thomas the Tank Engine was the steam train himself, right? So
I was going to ask you about that.
So everyone kind of understands the concept of the steam train. And then it evolved. And it evolved from the perspective of, particularly when I started Insentra with my co-founders, we really sat down and said, okay, well, what are the things we love about places we've worked? Well, let's make sure we do those.
Yeah.
What are the things we hated about places we worked? Well, let's make sure we don't do that. And for all the stuff that we just didn't know, well, you know what, we kind of wing it and we work it out. And then if something comes up, we bring it into the train story so that we now know exactly what's going to happen. And I think your point is absolutely accurate. So nobody joins our business without a couple of things happening. Firstly, reading the train story. Secondly, having an interview with me. And the interview with me, by the time they've got to me, I make the assumption that they've got the technical capability. They've been through all of the necessary tech interviews and capability interviews. For me, I'm looking for cultural fit. And the idea of having everybody read the train story before they even start interviewing with Insentra is then they know what it is, because it's also not for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like the culture that we have doesn't necessarily suit every person. So a lot of what we've done with the train story is to make it very clear as to how we do things, and also what's in the art of the acceptable and what is in the art of the unacceptable. So it's very, very clear up front. And, I think when you know what you're going into, then you have a degree of safety. And that's the other reason why people leave workplaces. Yeah, and to that end, by the way, I loathe the term employee. I think employer-employee creates a master-servant relationship.
Absolutely.
And it's not like that. It isn't like that.
Yeah. I think there's only one thing worse than that, and it's subordinate.
Oh, no, well, that's... welcome to the army, have a nice day.
It's another dirty word. I just want to pick up on something, Ronnie, because you talk about the cultural fit. So how do you balance making sure that somebody is a good cultural fit with ensuring diversity, so you don't end up with that groupthink?
Well, the culture, the cultural fit and diversity, I don't think are necessarily related. And for me, diversity is about diversity in thought.
Yeah.
And that's what's really important. But, when you look at a corporate culture is really how do people work within an organization together? So, they can have absolutely diverse thoughts and diverse approaches to what they do and the way they think. But in terms of how do they work within an environment, well, to be honest with you, I don't want diversity where it includes somebody who is political.
Yeah.
That's not a level of diversity I want. I don't want diversity for someone who doesn't come to work with a passion for what they do, who doesn't want to be honest, who doesn't operate with integrity. So there are some very simple things where it's like, there are some parts of diversity I just won't allow into the business. That doesn't mean, however, that I'm not going to get a bunch of diverse people. In fact, the more diverse, as far as I'm concerned, the better, because that's where we get different ideas and different opinions.
Yeah.
And indeed, the train story, whilst it's there as it is, as I said to you, it evolves. So if there's something that we find, I'll add it into the train story. The hardest part we've found, however, is we can tell people through the train story what we do. The hard part, however, is firstly having them accept that it's not too good to be true, and then how to operate within that environment. So let me give you an example.
Yeah.
One of the things that really is incredibly powerful, but not necessarily so easy to implement, is the simple concept of starting meetings with "How are you?" 1 to 10 personally, and 1 to 10 as it relates to work. So we can tell people, hey, this is what we do, and if you're a 7 or less, there's always going to be a team around you that's going to be curious as to how they can help you. If it's personal, you don't need to share why. We just like to understand that you've got something going on personally, and if things aren't great at work for a particular reason, we want to know. Now, when people come in, it takes them a while to recognize that it's actually okay to say that at work they're a 6. They're having a bad time. They're having a rough time. If I tell people it's a 6, they're going to think I'm unhappy. They're going to think I'm not doing my job. Actually, no, it's not what it's about. But that takes time for people to realize that that's not the case. So I kind of talk in our monthly all hands. I remind people about the newbies. As the company grows and we get the newbies in. Anybody who's new into the organization, I remind people, remember what you were like when you started. You came in and you said, all of this stuff is too good to be true. I'm going to watch and wait and see when something doesn't happen so that I can go, yes, see, it's not true. And, and the reality is as you grow an organization, we're now sort of 90 plus people globally. And we are consistent globally in our culture, by the way, which is another interesting item. But when you grow a business and you do so rapidly, it's really important to ensure that people are continually reminded of the things that we do. And also creating an environment where someone new feels safe to come and say, hey, you know what? You said that you do this, but I've just had this scenario happen and I didn't see us living the train story and values. Oh, really? Chances are the person actually made a mistake and just didn't do it right, rather than a systemic issue. But holy hammer, let's get on top of this first because we don't want it to become systemic and we need to go back and educate the individual who may not have done it in accordance with the way we do it.
That's such an important point, Ronnie. I know a lot of the organizations that I work with, that whole area around psychological safety is such a sticking point. It's such a blocker for innovation, for creativity, for conflict resolution. So, I'm just, I suppose, in admiration of that focus on creating that safe environment for people to bring their whole selves to work and share. And I love, again, your analogy of the 1 to 10. Yeah, I just really, really like that. Thank you.
Look, it's not mine. I'll be fair. It's not mine. I picked that up from the wonderful Sharon Edwards, who's a a lady who I did some work with, and it was something she used to do at the start of meetings. And I thought, wow, as soon as I had that first meeting and they did that, I'm like, I'm bringing that into the company. I can't take full credit for it. I think in terms of that safety, the psychological safety, we refer to that as no fear of retribution.
Yeah.
But however, that's also difficult to put it to implement. So I can say to people, hey, you know what, come and tell me something that's going on, and don't fear that it's going to cause a problem for your job, a problem for your safety in the office, etc. Oh, really? Am I going to go tell the CEO that I'm not happy about something? Oh, I'm not so sure. Wonder what's going to happen. So again, the what is, hey, come and tell us stuff with no fear of retribution. Getting people to that point takes time. Takes time for them to feel.
How do you grow that? How do you get them to that point?
Authenticity, consistency, having an EQ that identifies. So you can, sometimes I just walk into work and I look at somebody and I think, yeah, they don't look so happy today.
Yeah.
I might just take a couple of minutes and have a chat with them and see what's going on. Or alternatively, everybody finds somebody at work that they're comfortable with. The idea of a buddy is interesting, but ultimately people find their own buddies. It's what they do. So, it's working with people and saying, hey, you don't have to escalate it to management. And escalation is a horrible word, right? I don't like the word escalate because it indicates that something's getting worse.
I hadn't thought about that. That's so true.
Yeah, let me escalate that. Well, okay, now is my manager going to think I'm in trouble? Am I going to be in trouble with my manager because I'm going above their head? Am I going to get in trouble? And it's like, well, all of my leaders in the business actually will encourage people that if they're not happy with what they hear, please take it to the next level of management. That's not an escalation. That's a, let's go see what they say. If you're passionate about something, and I say to people, until I've made a decision, as in, the CEO of the business has made a decision, the decision doesn't have to be final. If you feel passionate enough about something, well, bring it to me and let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And let's understand what it is. You may get the outcome you look for, or you may not, but at least you've gone as far as you can go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, going back to that huge Gallup poll, one of the questions was that I have someone at work who cares for me. And when we both spoke at the same conference and we both used the L word, and it wasn't leadership, but rather love, and love in the sense of that tribal connection. So, as someone who so deeply and passionately cares for their people and is happy to share that they love their people, what do you think is holding leaders back from bringing more of that focus on love and growing that connection and care in their businesses?
Oh, I think there's many things, and many different things can impact that. I think one of the things that's super impactful is the organisation that cares about the bottom line first and the people second. If I don't hit numbers, I'm not going to have a job. So just get up and get on with your job, will you? Stop making noise. There's that kind of scenario. There's also the scenario where people don't know how to show love. They think love is almost a word or an emotion that is reserved for their deepest relationships that they have, or their pets, or and I say to people all the time, I'm like, so what's your favorite food? Oh, I love this. Oh, okay, so you have a love for something, and in fact, that's even an inanimate thing, really. So it's that kind of feeling of love that we try to evoke, because when you're in that situation where you feel like you love something, right? So I love people. I love growing people. I love developing people. It's a passion of mine. For me, my legacy, if you like, everyone talks about their legacy. When I die, I just want a couple of things to happen. I want people to want to come to my funeral. And I don't mean to sort of be really down here, right? But I want people to come to my funeral, not feel like they have to turn up at my funeral. And then I want the dialogue to be, wow, that guy made such a difference to my life. And that's, it's coming from that perspective. And I think a lot of people turn up to work and they do a job.
Yeah.
I'm going to work to do my job and then I'm leaving. I tell people, if you want a job, don't work at Insentra. We're not the place for you.
Yeah.
You know, if you want a career and you want to work with a bunch of really passionate individuals who are all doing the same, you know, all heading in the same direction, all on the same train, all helping us move where we need to go, then you'll have a ball at Insentra. But if you want to come and do a job and don't get involved, and, you know, when I say get involved, it's not like we have all these massive social events, etc., that you have to go to. It's like, be a part. Be a part. Bring your authentic self into the business and feel comfortable to do so. You know, and I think it's taking from the Atlassian concept of no brilliant jerks, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like just be a good person.
And I think, you know, it's interesting. When I was reading the Train story, and we talk about the heart-centered leader, and we talk about care and love, but it also includes boundaries, and that's what I love about when you're saying, you know, these are our values. This is the way that we work. And if you want to be political, and if you want to say it's not my job, then I'm going to throw you off the train and not even wait for a platform. I loved that. But again, and you know, it's about people knowing where they stand.
Interesting you should raise that. I've had, for the first time in many years of people looking at the Train story, I had some interesting constructive feedback just this week.
Okay.
Where somebody wrote me a mail and said, hey, are you interested in getting some feedback? I'm like, absolutely, please do. And you know, the more constructive, the better. And this particular person had zero idea of who I was. And the feedback that was provided to me was, you know, when I started reading the Train story, I was like, I would never want to have a boss like Ronnie. And I then went away and watched some of your videos, Ronnie, and sort of saw how, you know, the passion and your, you know, the way that you approach things. And then I came back and thought, wow, I only want a boss like Ronnie. So the interesting thing about that, right, is the Train story does polarize. And my belief on that as well is if people want to be a part of an organization, then they will go and do some more research and identify. But, you know, there are some things in there which is, again, we talk about diversity. I don't want people who struggle with boundaries. Because those types of individuals will generally struggle with accountability.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, and we've had it since we were children. Your parents set boundaries, right? They teach you to make good and bad decisions, and they set a boundary. That's not okay. You don't just get up and run across the road. You don't take something without saying thank you. You know, there's boundaries that we all have, and boundaries create certainty, and certainty creates safety.
Yeah.
So if everyone knows that at Insentra, as soon as you lie, you're out, then everybody knows that anybody else in the business they can trust. They can work with and trust. So it's just interesting, you know, that feedback is sort of, you know, came in this week, and I'm thinking it through and trying to see, you know, what do I do with that feedback as it relates to the Train story. But for me, the reason why, so the Train story that you read online is me having said it to somebody. So that's me talking at somebody for 20 minutes, recording it and having it transcribed. So it's authentically me.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's not crafted. It's authentically me and how I deliver that. So yeah, it's interesting that you say you love that. There is somebody out there who says, well, I don't know.
and that's a really important point, you know, and you're looking at organization-wide communication, that when it's in the written form, we listen, we read that story in our voice, not in your voice. And exactly. So that in isolation, without going to the videos, was a certain interpretation of the message. So, you know, how do you, particularly as Insentra grows, how do you maintain an authentic communication and make sure that the intention and the impact are aligned?
Great question. So as I say, it starts from me meeting with people to start with. So they get an immediate insight into Ronnie when they get to meet with me. And then once they're a part of the business, I will try at random times every week to select 2 or 3 different people, give them a call and say, hey, how you doing? You know, I think who doesn't like getting a call from the CEO after their heart starts beating properly again?
I was just going to say, if they see that it's you, they're going, "Oh shit, what have I done now?"
Yeah, the funniest one is when I ring some people and they go, "Oh my, I really should have saved your number in my phone." I'm like, "Hey, don't worry about it, you know. It's okay. It's okay. You're not expecting me to ring you, so it's fine." And I like it when that happens because it's, again, it's like, you know what, I'm human too. So I will do that when I'm in the office. I'll spend some time just popping over to people and saying hello. Then I have my monthly. In fact, let's start with weekly. In my weekly executive call with my exec team, there's a standing agenda item in that exec call, which is anything going on with the crew, positive or negative. So what do we all need to know about as a team of execs about an individual in the business and where they're at in their life and what's going on? So my whole exec team gets across different people, and then based on the outcome of that typically drives who I'll talk to that week. So it might be, this person's going through a really rough time. They've got some issues going on personally, or they've got a medical problem or a family issue. I will take the time and give them a call, not because I want to tick a box, because I actually care about them.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on? I'm hearing this. I hope you're okay. If you need anything from us or the business, let us know. And then there's the other ones, which is, such and such did a great job. And we have that as the shout out, right? Every week there's 2, 3, 4 shout outs that, go out in the email to the whole crew, sort of saying, hey, let's call out this person and let sort of talk to them. And then I have the all hands meeting once a month. And in the all hands meeting, I do obviously a big full company update, what's going on, where are things at. We have awards that we do within the all hands meeting that are actually all nominations from within the crew.
Great.
And in that all hands session, I will pick one section of the train story, or I'll choose one value and I will unpack that with people. And if something has happened over the previous month, I'll use an example of, hey, this is what happened as it relates to this. So let me explain to you all how it works. And if people keep hearing that regularly and there's continual reinforcement of what we do, then it starts to become part of their own way of doing things. And I say culture starts at the top with me. It percolates from the bottom and it permeates within. So i.e., every single person in our organization is responsible for maintaining our culture.
Yeah.
If something changes in our culture and someone comes to me and says, Ronnie, the culture's really changed, first thing I'll do is ask them to take their phone out, put it on selfie mode, have a good long look and say, what did you do to stop this? Because, in the words of General David Morrison, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept.
Oh,
so you are all empowered and all able to manage and maintain our culture. So there's we don't do it that way here. Let me explain to you why. No, that wouldn't happen here. Please don't feel like that would take place. Or alternatively, I thought we didn't do it that way. Why is it happening that way? Make sure that you let people know. Don't sit there and just watch it happen, because then it will start to become the new normal.
Yeah, and I think, that's an absolute critical element, that your values are not something that's just stuck on a wall or above the door or what have you, but that you continually reinforcing the story of who you are and why you do what you do and what your norms and values are. And I wanted to ask you a question, because you've got, how many countries are you in now, Ronnie?
We have people physically in 5 countries. In
5 countries. So with people working virtually, again, I've had experience of organizations where it's the dropout rate of people in the virtual offices is quite high because they just don't feel part of the tribe. So how do you manage that? How do you manage to keep those people connected and part of the family?
Look, in multiple ways. Obviously, technology really makes that a lot better now with, scenarios like Teams, etc. So our international teams, a lot of whom do work at home, we only have one physical office, being our Sydney office. Those who work at home are always on video calls with their colleagues. So if there's a call, try and make it a video call if you can.
Yeah.
There's regular meetings that happen, team meetings. In fact, our US and UK teams get together and have virtual beers once a week. Where they sort of sit around, crack a beer open and have a chat with each other. And then, for those offices where we don't have people, we try to make sure that we bring them together at least once a year. And so, for example, in January, I have the UK and the US teams all coalescing in New Orleans, and we'll do an offsite in New Orleans. And it'll be the same offsite that we'll do for our Australian crew. So that, the reality is if I'm not paying rent, I'd rather take the money I was paying on rent and use it on the people, to have them come together.
I just want to stop you there. Can you repeat that? Because that is such an important message.
Yeah, I'm not paying rent. If I was paying rent, then I would have to waste that money. But if they're all working at home, I could take the money that I would otherwise spend on rent, and I can use at least some of that to bring everybody together and do team events. So in the UK, for example, our team in the UK gets together physically at least once a quarter, at least. And when I say, the UK, that includes Scotland, right? So we've got people who live a few hours out of London, but at minimum, they all get together and they all spend an afternoon and an evening together, have a meal, and they all go back and do what they do, but they just maintain that physical connection. And when they join the organisation, once they hop on the train, they know they're going to be working from home. And we sort of say to them, hey, if you ever feel lonely, if you ever feel like you're out, just let us know. You can always come back, and you can always fly into somewhere if you're in the US. You can go and see people. So that's kind of how we do it. There's no secret sauce to that, right? That there is definitely having it front of mind, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
And we are a global team. That's the other thing. We operate truly globally. The culture, I can tell you very confidently, is identical in the US and the UK. Both of my leaders in each of those locations are equally passionate about culture. They're equally passionate about the way we do things. And they're very, very happy to drive that through their organisation locally. And again, everybody hears it at least monthly from me.
Oh, that's so important. Often I'll ask a question if I'm running a workshop, and I'll say, okay, if I took each of you out individually and took you to the pub and bought you a drink and said, tell me, what's it like to work at Company X? What sort of responses would I get? And so often it's a different story. It's a different description. It's a different, and so to hear that you achieve that unified culture and I think microcultures are fine so long as they still support the values, but to have that, that essence of culture globally, I think is absolutely fantastic. And I want to go in a little bit deeper, if you don't mind. Maybe ask for some courageous vulnerability, because you mentioned earlier on about, you got together with your co-founders and you said, okay, what was it that we loved that we want to keep, and what was it that we didn't like about where we worked that we don't want to keep? But I want to know about Ronnie, and how else maybe in your life have you been influenced to be so passionate and caring about people, or look, were you just born loving?
Yeah. You made me think of a time with my eldest son. He's now 21, and when I first took him to karate, and he was in a karate competition, and after his first karate competition, his sensei came to me and said, you know what, this kid's built for loving, not for fighting. So I think he might have got some of that from me and some of it from his mum too. So yeah, look, I am a lover, not a fighter. And I mean that in a physical sense. I'm certainly, I'm out there, I'm competitive. At the end of the day, I'm an entrepreneur, right? So I'm dynamic, and I like to do lots of different things, and we'll push the boundaries as much as I can, to try getting things out of the norm. But I think a lot of it also came down, I did have a great childhood. I did have, was raised in a really loving environment. But a lot of it came down to having worked for some real, and I'm going to use the word, assholes, and having worked for some real gems of individuals. And the different emotion that working for different types of people evoked in me was the emotion I wanted to evoke in everybody who ever had worked together with me or quote unquote for me. I don't like the working for somebody, right? But, people whom I had the opportunity to lead and grow and develop, I wanted them to walk away, and I want them to walk away with a feeling of that they matter, and that they're enough. and that where they have areas for development, they're exactly that. They're not areas of failure. They're areas of development. They're areas of opportunity. I think, you know, the sort of growth mindset is something I'm enormously passionate about. I'm consistently the glass is half full. No matter how bad it is, there's always an answer. There's always an outcome. It's just a question of whether you want to execute on that answer or not. But there's always going to be a different way. There's always an opportunity for something to be worse.
Yeah.
You know, other than you're about to die. Right? You know, probably doesn't get worse than that. But outside of that, anything else is achievable. So, you know, where it comes from me is having had some great experiences in my life, and also having had some experiences that haven't been so wonderful. And, you know, if I can minimize the not so wonderful for people, well, isn't that a great outcome?
Absolutely. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking that, you know, there might be people who join Insentra, and I find it a lot in the tech industry, that this feeling that I have to be the best, I have to perform, you know, consistently at the top, rather than how can I be the best version of myself. So I suspect that there may be people who come and join you from a work-based perspective, but this whole growth mindset and care and love ripples out into their personal life as well.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example there. Literally, again, in the past week, we had somebody who's relatively new in our organisation, and I offer to everyone the opportunity to come and spend time with Ronnie as and when they want to, right? First line of the train story, or first part of the train story, talks to the fact that it's really lonely up the front. And I'm never too busy to spend time with my people. You know, our people are everything. So I mentioned it to one of the individuals in our business that they were interviewing, that, hey, you know, once you get in, and if you want to grow and you want to develop and you feel like there's something I can do to help you, I'm very happy to do some coaching with you one-on-one. And after a little while of being in the business, probably about 3 months, this particular individual came to me and said, hey, you did mention this to me in the interview. I'd love to take you up on the offer. And I said, sure. So we got together, and it was only this week, in fact, or actually late last week. And the discussion started, and I said, well, so how do we do this, Ronnie? Do you have a framework that you're going to take me through, or how would you like to approach this coaching? And I said, well, to be honest with you, no, I don't have a framework. I have lots of different things in my kit bag that I can reach for, and I can take you on a journey. However, you've asked me to coach you because there's something you want to be coached on. And you've come to me because you feel there are areas where you can develop. So the more we talk, the more those are going to come out. Anyway, and I said, so let's start with this. How do you want to be seen? Like, in your view, what do you want people to do? I have to be excellent. I just want excellence. And I said, okay, so talk to me more about being excellent. What does being excellent mean? And we had a bit chat about that. And I said, so do you think you'll ever be excellent? And that really stopped them in their tracks. And they said, actually, no, I don't think I'll ever be excellent. I said, okay, but do you think that you can continue to strive for excellence? Yeah, I can. Just changing those words made a really big difference there, Ronnie. I'm like, you know what? Who defines excellent anyway? Who defines being the best? Yeah. You need to be the best you can be. And what we can do is work to how do we make you the best version of yourself. And in fact, that's part of our vision statement, is helping people to be the best versions of themselves. Yeah. And it was a great opportunity for me to bring this individual back to that part of our vision statement and talk about the why. And so to that end, it's like, yeah, we do get a bunch of people in tech who have to be the best. That's what, and people are raised to be the best. We're raised in a competitive environment, right? If you don't get the top mark, you're not going to get into medicine. If you don't get the top this, if you don't get the top that. And there's an element of that that's valid and makes sense, and it is a way to look at different people's abilities and all sorts of stuff around that. But the real thing is, well, how do you strive for excellence? And that's sort of what we try to do with individuals, is you don't have to be the best. You have to be the best you can be, and you have to be the best version of yourself.
Oh, and that's so important, because you're I'm trying to think of the right terminology, but to be excellent is a static thing, but to strive for excellence is a journey. It's a trajectory. It's a movement of progress.
Interesting, because that was one of the things I said. I said, so once you're excellent, how do you get better from there?
It's like, what happened before the Big Bang?
Yeah, what do you do next? Okay. Yeah. Somebody somewhere has defined and said, oh my God, you're excellent. You go, cool, I'm done.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody would invent anything wonderful if they felt that they were excellent at the time. There'd be no improvement. There'd be no innovation. But yeah, that's excellent. You know, we have a light globe. Yeah, that was excellent. Now we have LED light globes. Okay, we've got a new level of excellence.
Yeah. Wow. And slightly left field, but talking about innovation, creativity. Is there a correlation between the caring, heart-centered culture that you have and people being more innovative and creative? And if there is, what is the causality of that or the correlation?
So I haven't necessarily looked at it from that standpoint. I think innovation is a difficult thing to get going in any organization. Mm-hmm. You know, we have set up an innovation board where we encourage people to bring ideas and to have their ideas brought to the forum. You need to have an environment where people are comfortable to come up with the wacky, zany ideas too. But critically as well, and that's enough. Safety. Exactly. But also critically, you need to have the right approach when people's ideas don't get up. You know, so that's the struggle that you have, I think, with innovation in an organization, is getting the culture right firstly around it's okay to fail. And it's not even failure, it's just not to achieve the outcome you initially set out to achieve. That doesn't mean you failed, it just means you didn't do that. So having that culture is important. So I think, yes, there is definitely a correlation between an environment of safety and an environment, you know, culturally that allows for that. But I think more importantly, it needs to be a culture where people feel dynamic, because innovation doesn't happen in a stagnant place. You know, you need to have an organization that is behaving in a dynamic fashion, that does shift and change and move and does do things differently on a regular basis, for people to feel comfortable and say, wow, I wonder if we could do this. You know, the power of the if.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we
are innovative. I think we can be more innovative as an organization, and it's you know, as well, when you're busy and you're growing and you know, it's like, okay, how do we take the time out and actually carve time out for people to go and be innovative?
Yeah.
And, you know, if I take you and I say, okay, Claire, go and sit in the room for the next 4 hours and innovate something. Well, okay, what am I doing? It's hard, right?
Yeah. My innovation comes at 4 o'clock in the morning, or when I'm in the shower, or when I'm going for a jog, or, you know, rarely it comes in a workspace.
Exactly. So we encourage that too. And we also encourage people, you know, we incentivize people too. So you come up with something and we go do it, then we're going to pay you a part of whatever we receive for that.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a return on the innovation too for them. Absolutely.
I mean, you know, in your experience of growing this culture, if for people who are listening from this and thinking, you know, gosh, it goes back to something you said earlier, you know, I really do want this culture. But then deep down, when we go underneath the waterline of the iceberg, it's, you know, what are the drivers? What are some of the key messages that you could share for people who do genuinely want that heart-centered culture, but are struggling where to begin? What are some of the messages, Ronnie?
I would say decide what you want that to look like. Firstly, you know, I want a great culture. Cool. Define it for me.
Yeah.
You need to have a consciously created culture, not just, we want to create a really great place to work and we want to make it fun. And okay, well, how are you going to do that? So I think it starts with, you know, it's really why, what, how, what if, right? Why do you want to do this? What do you want to do? How are you actually going to go and do that? And what happens if it doesn't work? What are you going to do? What are the things that are around that? So I would definitely be saying to people, start from that perspective. Don't bother trying to create a great culture. If you're going to do it to tick a box, then you're going to do it. You know, if you truly don't believe what Richard Branson says, which is look after your people, the people will look after your clients and therefore your bottom line, then don't even bother.
Yeah.
don't even bother. You have to be of the opinion. And I tell our clients, you're not my number one priority. And their faces drop. It's really the most hysterical thing. So you're not my number one priority until one of the people in our crew who are my number one priority tell me I need to make you my number one priority. And then I will make you a priority over them. But otherwise, my crew are the priority. And if I get that right, you probably won't ever need to come to me as to be a priority, because my crew will do it the right way.
Yeah.
And I want a crew of people who go out. We're in a services game, right? I want people who go out, and when they do get called by Claire down to the pub after having done a day's work and have a drink, and they say, "So, what's it like?" I want them to consciously and comfortably say, "I love where I work.
Yeah.
I love what I do. I love where I do it, and I love the people that I do it with." That's what I want as an outcome. So again, it's what's the outcome that people are looking for when they're, looking to create a culture. And I think a lot of people struggle with the how do I deal with it when it doesn't go the way I want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
When people don't do the things in the way I want to do it. And that becomes about consistency and authenticity.
Yeah.
So if you say to somebody there's no fear of retribution, and then one person comes in and has absolute retribution for having done something, that's really terrible. In my view, if someone doesn't do something illegal, if they don't do something nasty, if they don't do something consciously to be a problem, then you know what? They probably didn't mean it.
Mm.
So if they didn't mean for this to be the outcome, well, let's work with them as to how it happened and then fix it and move on. But you've got to start from the perspective of people are actually largely good.
Mm.
And you also need to be a leader that says when there are people who aren't good and are bad eggs, well, then we're not going to have them here.
Yeah, I've seen too many teams. I've seen too many teams go toxic because they're tolerating one bad egg, or moving them around to different departments, which is beyond me. I don't never understood.
Who wants to tolerate people at work? I mean, yes, you're not going to get along with everybody, but tolerate is a whole different level.
Yeah.
Who wants to accept behaviours that just aren't okay? But if you don't set, and this is why the train story's there, if you don't tell people what behaviours are okay and are not okay, well, then how do they know what's okay and what's not?
Exactly. So, okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Ronnie, before we go. Have you got an example of when you've stuffed up and you've had to fess up?
Yeah, we do. We had somebody in the organisation who was covering for someone on maternity leave. Mm-hmm. They didn't realise they were covering for someone on maternity leave for some reason. And their manager knew that the maternity leave person was coming back and said to call them into a room and said, "Hey, listen, you know what? Thanks very much. We've been doing this maternity leave, but we don't have this role for you anymore," and let them go that day. And I had no idea this was going on. Mm-hmm. And it came to my attention. I'm like, "You did what? you did what? You didn't have any conversations in the lead up to this to say, hey, this is going to be happening. Hey, this is what's going to happen in the future." You call someone into a room and said, "Right, thanks for coming." You must be kidding me. So I immediately got on the phone to that individual, got them straight back into the office and said, "Hey, you got another 3 months with us.
Wow.
I want you to stick around for the next 3 months. I am so very sorry. This is how it happened. It should never have happened this way. Someone made a really big mistake in doing this. We totally screwed up. I'm so very sorry." And then I actually told the company about what we did.
Yeah.
I told the whole company, I said, "Hey guys, this is what happened. We totally screwed up and this is what we've done to fix it." And the reason why I did that is A, because I think it's important for everybody to know that we are human and we can make mistakes as well as leaders. B, so that any of the internal dialogue that took place would be framed in accordance with what actually happened rather than what it seemed like happened. It was just somebody just screwed up. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't nasty. It was just a screw up on the behalf of the leader. So we do make mistakes. We're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. It's back to that excellence thing, right? But again, when these things happen, what you do in that scenario defines what it will look like. A lot of business would have gone, "Well, okay, shit, that happened. We shouldn't have done that." Pardon my French. That shouldn't have happened. We shouldn't have done that. Well, we went to that again. No. Yeah,
and that goes back to one of your earlier quotes about the standard that you walk by is the standard that you set. And it didn't hurt your pride to have to share that, did it? I think a lot of leaders, gosh, I'm going to be seen as vulnerable or weak or what have you. And in fact, the opposite impact happens because you're showing your authenticity.
Well, yeah, and the interesting thing is, I don't do it from that standpoint. I don't do it from the perspective of, oh, let me show people this. No, I did it because that's what my heart told me I should be doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's, I think, what's really important when you talk about a heart-centered leader. It's like, the question that, that my partner asked me is, what would love do in this scenario? What would love do?
Oh my goodness, you've I think you've just come full circle and completed this conversation with absolutely beautifully. Oh, Ronnie, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. I love your messages. As soon as I met you and listened to you, and exactly what you're saying is, you don't need to, it isn't a conscious effort to show authenticity. You just are authentic. What you say and what you do and how you behave is all congruent. So I think your team's very lucky to have you at the front of the train, and I hope it's not too lonely a place.
Claire, you flatter me. I'm blessed to have a wonderful crew around me. Right, my executive team is superb. Everyone in our business, I think, is just fantastic. They wake up every day and they make all of us look good. We all do it every day. Wake up and make one another look great, and try and deliver great outcomes. So you definitely flatter. It's not too lonely at the front. I do. A lot of people do come and talk to me. I sit in an open plan. In fact, I'm very hardly at my desk, but when I'm in the office, but I am in an open plan, and it is no doors. It's,
right.
So sometimes it does get lonely, but I can deal with that, and I can alleviate my loneliness by making a phone call or by only saying hi to someone.
So long as it's someone who's caring for you too.
Oh, absolutely. I feel very loved.
So, Ronnie, I'll put the link to the train story on the notes. Are you happy for people to contact you and connect with you on LinkedIn?
Oh, 150%.
Brilliant. So I'll put that link out there as well.
Yeah, most definitely.
Thank you.
Any and all feedback is welcome, and if people want to have a chat, I always say, never say no to a coffee. So if people want to have a chat, I'm always open to having a chat.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ronnie. Go well.
No, thank you for the opportunity. It's lovely to chat with you.
Yeah, it is. It's great. It's a great way to start my Friday.
Well, you enjoy Friday and the weekend.
Cheers. Go well now.
Cheers, Claire.
Bye-bye. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.